The moment I stepped into the grand hall, I could smell their disdain, sharp as vinegar, cold as winter wind. My pack sisters had spent hours perfecting their appearances for tonight's ceremony, while I had been handed a mop and a bucket of soapy water that sloshed against my threadbare dress. A joke. That's what I was to them, the ugly Omega, the one whose light blonde hair hung limp instead of bouncing in glossy waves, whose frame remained too thin despite the abundance of food in our prosperous pack. "Make sure the floors shine, Charlotte," Beta Irene had commanded earlier, her perfect lips curving into what others might mistake for a smile. After all, the Alpha King will be walking on them tonight. The annual Moonstone ceremony was hours away, a sacred ritual where eligible Omegas from surrounding packs would be presented to neighboring Alphas, and this year, to the legendary Alpha King of the Northern Territories himself. Our pack hadn't been graced with his presence in decades. His arrival had sent the entire community into a frenzy of preparation. But I wasn't part of that eligible group. I was just Charlotte, the orphaned Omega, whose parents had died protecting our borders years ago. Their sacrifice had earned me a place in the pack house, but little else. Not respect, not kindness, certainly not a chance at tonight's ceremony. My fingers tightened around the old silver pendant hanging from my neck. The only inheritance from my mother. She had whispered its meaning to me when I was small, before the attack that took her life. True worth shines from within, little one. Remember that when the world sees only your surface. I dragged the mop across the marble floor, watching the water create slick patterns that disappeared almost as quickly as they formed. The hall was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers caught the late afternoon light, scattering rainbows across walls adorned with ancient pack symbols. Tables lined with silver and fresh wildflowers stretched toward a raised platform where the Alpha King would sit. Everything perfect, everything gleaming. Everyone was too busy to notice me, which was a blessing. The younger Omegas flitted around like hummingbirds, hanging decorations and giggling about which Alpha might choose them. The Betas directed traffic, barking orders and fussing over details. Our Alpha, a distant figure who rarely acknowledged my existence, was sequestered in his study preparing to welcome the royal guest. I was nearly finished with the eastern corner when the main doors burst open, sending a rush of autumn air swirling through the hall. My head jerked up instinctively, and the world seemed to stop. He stood in the entrance, taller than any man I'd ever seen, shoulders broad beneath a dark cloak, his presence filling the space like smoke. The Alpha King had arrived early, hours before the ceremony was set to begin. Every person in the hall dropped into deep bows. I froze, mop still in hand, water pooling around my worn shoes. I should bow. I should hide. His eyes found mine across the expanse of marble and air. Time stretched between us like taffy, sweet and impossible. His gaze wasn't passing over me as most did. It was fixed, intent, as if I were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "Your Majesty," our pack Alpha hurried forward, breaking the strange moment. "We weren't expecting you until I prefer to arrive unannounced." The Alpha King's voice rolled like distant thunder. It reveals more truth than a rehearsed welcome. I lowered my eyes and tried to make myself smaller, melting back toward the wall. This wasn't happening. The most powerful Alpha in the territory couldn't possibly have noticed me. The cleaning girl, the joke, the unwanted Omega. The commotion that followed was chaos incarnate. Betas scrambling to prepare rooms, Omegas being hustled away to finish their preparations early, Alphas straightening their ceremonial attire. I remained pressed against the wall, hoping to become invisible. Girl. The word cut through the noise like a knife. The Alpha King's voice directed at me. The hall fell silent. I raised my eyes slowly, feeling every gaze in the room turn toward me. The Alpha King stood 10 paces away, his expression unreadable. "Your name." It wasn't a question, but a command. "Charlotte, Your Majesty," I whispered, my voice barely carrying across the space between us. "Charlotte," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "You will show me to my quarters." Gasps rippled through the hall. Beta Irene stepped forward, her perfect features twisted with horror. "Your Majesty, please, this Omega is merely here to clean."
"We have prepared proper attendance for—" Did I stutter? His words were soft, but carried a weight that silenced Irene instantly. His eyes never left mine. "Charlotte will show me to my quarters." My heart hammered against my ribs as I set the mop against the wall with trembling hands. I could feel the burning outrage and confusion emanating from everyone around me. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't proper. This was a mistake that would surely cost me later.
"Yes, Your Majesty," I managed, my feet carrying me forward, though I had no idea where his quarters would be. As if reading my thoughts, our pack alpha cleared his throat. "The Eastern Wing, Charlotte, the Royal Suite." His eyes contained a warning I couldn't quite decipher. I nodded and began walking, acutely aware of the Alpha King falling into step beside me rather than behind. Another breach of protocol, another reason for the pack to punish me later. We left the Grand Hall, and I led him down the corridor toward the Eastern Wing. The silence between us stretched taut until I thought it might snap. His scent enveloped me, pine and wood smoke and something wilder that made my Omega instincts both tremble and sing. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the rhythm of our footsteps against the stone floor. "They're using you poorly," he said suddenly. I nearly stumbled. "Your Majesty, your pack, they're using you poorly." His voice was matter of fact, as if he were commenting on the weather. I don't know what you mean," I whispered, though I did. "Of course I did." He made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. "You know exactly what I mean, Charlotte. I can smell the disrespect on them. I can see how they've tried to diminish you." We reached the door to the royal suite, and I stopped, keeping my eyes lowered. "This is your room, Your Majesty." Instead of entering, he circled me slowly, his gaze a physical weight on my skin. "Look at me," he commanded softly. I raised my eyes to his and nearly gasped. They were the color of amber in sunlight, flecked with gold and something ancient. The face that held them was sharp-featured and beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. "Why do you accept it?" he asked. "Their contempt, their cruelty." The question pierced something deep inside me, something I'd buried beneath years of quiet endurance. "I have nowhere else to go," I answered honestly. "My parents died protecting this pack. It's the only home I know." His expression darkened. "A home that treats you like this is no home at all." Before I could respond, the sound of hurried footsteps approached. Beta Irene appeared at the end of the hallway, her face composed into a mask of servility that didn't reach her eyes. "Your Majesty," she called, her voice honey-sweet. "The ceremonial bath has been prepared for you, and we have assigned proper attendants to—" "Charlotte will attend me," he cut her off, his eyes never leaving mine. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Attending the Alpha King during his ceremonial bath was an honor reserved for the highest-ranking betas or the most beautiful omegas. Not for me. Never for me. "But Your Majesty," Irene's voice took on a desperate edge. "She isn't trained for such an honor. She's just a—" "Choose your next words with extreme care." The Alpha King's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. "This Omega will attend me for the duration of my stay. Is that clear?" Irene's face paled. "Yes, Your Majesty, of course." "Leave us," he commanded. When Irene had disappeared, he turned back to me. "You're afraid," he observed. "Yes," I admitted. "No point in lying to an alpha who could smell emotions. Not of me," he said with certainty. "Of them. Of what they'll do when I'm gone." I couldn't deny it. The retribution would be swift and merciless once he departed. He reached out slowly, giving me time to retreat, and lifted my silver pendant between his fingers. I held my breath as he examined the intricate design, a wolf howling at a crescent moon, surrounded by ancient symbols. "Do you know what this means?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. Only that it was my mother's. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, then surprise. "What was your mother's name?" "Elena," I whispered. "Elena Moonriver." His hand dropped the pendant as if it had burned him. He took a step back, his expression shifting through emotions too complex to read. "Elena Moonriver," he repeated, and there was history in his voice, old pain and something else I couldn't identify. The sound of a gong resonated through the pack house, the 1-hour warning for the ceremony. "You should prepare, Your Majesty," I said, desperate to escape the intensity of his gaze. "The ceremony will wait," he finished. "You will attend me now, Charlotte Moonriver." The use of my full name, so rarely spoken, sent a shiver down my spine. As I followed him into the royal suite, closing the door behind us, I couldn't shake the feeling that something irreversible had begun, that the path of my life had just veered sharply from everything I had ever known. Behind us, I could feel the rage and confusion of my pack building like a storm. Whatever game the Alpha King was playing by singling me out, I would be the one to pay the price when he tired of it. But as he turned to face me in the privacy of the royal chambers, I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. Not mockery or casual cruelty, but recognition. As if he had been searching for something for a very long time and had finally, unexpectedly, found it in me. The ugly Omega. The pack joke. The girl with the mop. "Charlotte," he said my name again, softer this time. "I think we have much to discuss before tonight's ceremony, and somehow, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again." The royal suite was a world apart from the servants' quarters where I slept. Plush carpets in deep burgundy covered the floor, and heavy velvet drapes framed windows that overlooked the forest. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in linens that looked softer than clouds. The ceremonial bath steamed in an adjoining room visible through an arched doorway, a copper tub filled with water and scattered with herbs and petals for purification before the ritual. I stood awkwardly near the door as the Alpha King shrugged off his heavy cloak, draping it over a nearby chair. Without the cloak, his powerful frame was even more imposing. Broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, his movements fluid with the easy grace of a predator. He wore a simple black shirt and trousers that somehow looked regal despite their plainness. "You're wondering why I chose you," he said without turning around. I swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty. Adrian," he corrected, finally facing me. "My name is Adrian." The informality shocked me into silence. No one addressed the Alpha King by his given name except perhaps other royal alphas. Certainly not a lowly Omega like myself. "I can't," I began. "You can," he interrupted. "When we're alone, at least." He moved toward a small table where a crystal decanter of amber liquid sat beside 2 glasses. He poured a small amount into each and extended one to me. When I hesitated, he smiled, a slight curving of lips that transformed his austere features. "It's just honeyed mead," he explained. "To settle your nerves." I accepted the glass, careful not to let our fingers touch. "Thank you. Adrian." His name felt forbidden on my tongue. He gestured toward a pair of chairs positioned near the fireplace. "Sit with me, Charlotte." It wasn't a request I could refuse. I perched on the edge of the chair, acutely aware of how out of place I must look. Still in my cleaning dress, my hair pulled back in a simple knot, my hands rough from work. Adrian settled across from me, his amber eyes never leaving my face. "Your pendant," he began, "belongs to an ancient lineage, the Moonriver pack." My heart stuttered. "But that's impossible. My mother was just an Omega in this pack. If she came from elsewhere, no one ever mentioned it." "Not just an Omega." Adrian's voice deepened. "Elena Moonriver was the daughter of Alpha Magnus Moonriver, the last true Alpha of the Northern Silver Packs before they were scattered 25 years ago." The room seemed to tilt around me. "That would make her a Royal Alpha female," he finished. "Yes." I shook my head, denial rising instinctively. "No, that can't be right. I'm an Omega." "Everyone knows that. I've been tested." "You've been lied to," Adrian said simply. "I knew your mother, Charlotte. She was promised to me once before the war that scattered her pack. She disappeared during the fighting. Everyone believed she was dead." The mead turned bitter in my mouth. "If what you're saying is true, why would our pack hide it? Why would they treat me like a servant? Like someone beneath them?" His eyes flashed with anger not directed at me. "Power, control, fear. Take your pick." I set my glass down with trembling hands. "You're telling me my mother was a Royal Alpha female promised to you, and I'm... what? Not an Omega at all?" Adrian leaned forward, his expression intense. "Your scent is masked, Charlotte. Suppressed. I couldn't identify what you truly are until I got close enough. Even now it's faint, but it's there. You're not what they've told you. Then what am I?" I whispered. Before he could answer, a sharp knock at the door interrupted us. Adrian's expression darkened as he called, "Enter." A nervous-looking beta male stepped in, keeping his eyes lowered. "Your Majesty, Alpha Bennett requests a word before the ceremony preparations continue." "Tell Bennett I'll speak with him shortly," Adrian replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. The beta bowed and retreated, closing the door softly behind him. Adrian turned back to me. "The bath," he said. "I still require attendance." Heat rushed to my cheeks as I remembered my assigned duty. I stood, moving toward the steaming tub in the adjoining room. "Of course, you're Adrian." The ceremonial bath was an ancient tradition. Herbs and sacred waters to purify an alpha before a binding ceremony. As I approached the copper tub, the fragrant steam enveloped me. Lavender, sage, cedar, and something deeper, more primal. "You haven't answered my question," I said quietly, keeping my back to him as I tested the water temperature. "If I'm not an Omega, what am I?" I heard him move behind me, his footsteps nearly silent on the thick carpet. "You're like your mother," he said, his voice closer now. "A rare alpha female, possibly the last of the Moon River line." The words fell between us like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I knew about myself. "That's not possible," I whispered. "I've never felt... I don't have any alpha traits. No strength, no dominance, no..." "Because they've been suppressed," he cut in. "Likely since childhood. There are herbs, ancient mixtures that can mask secondary gender characteristics. Your pack, or at least those in power, have been keeping you ignorant of your heritage." I turned to face him, finding him closer than I expected. "Why would they do that?" Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "The Moon River bloodline carries power. Old magic tied to the moon itself. Your mother's pack was feared and respected for it. After they were scattered, many would pay handsomely to control the last heir," his jaw tightened, "or to ensure no heir remained at all." A chill ran through me despite the steam filling the room. "You think our alpha knows? That he's been deliberately..." "I don't know yet," Adrian admitted. "But I intend to find out." He began unbuttoning his shirt, and I quickly averted my gaze, remembering my role. "I'll wait outside while you..." "Stay," he commanded, but gently. "I need to know everything about your life here, and you need to learn who you truly are." I kept my eyes fixed on the floor as the soft rustle of clothing told me he was disrobing. The splash of water signaled his entrance into the bath, and only then did I dare look up. He had settled into the copper tub, steam rising around him, the water reaching his chest. His powerful shoulders and arms remained visible, as did the intriguing pattern of dark tattoos that swirled across his skin, ancient pack symbols mixed with what looked like lunar phases. "Tell me everything, Charlotte," he said, "from your earliest memory until today." And so I did. I told him about growing up as the pack orphan, always on the outside. How the other children avoided me. How I was given the hardest, most menial tasks. How Alpha Bennett rarely acknowledged my existence except to use me as an example of an Omega's proper subservience. How I'd always felt different, but attributed it to being parentless, friendless, worthless. As I spoke, Adrian's expression darkened. The water around him seemed to ripple with his anger, though he remained perfectly still. When I described the Omega testing ceremony they'd performed on my 16th birthday, a ritual I now suspected was designed to reinforce my false status, a low growl rumbled from his chest. "They will pay for this," he said quietly. Fear spiked through me. "No, please. This is my home, however imperfect. I don't want trouble." "Home?" He raised an eyebrow. "Or prison?" I had no answer for that. Adrian reached for a cloth draped on the tub's edge. I stepped forward automatically, taking it from him. This was my duty as his attendant, after all. With trembling hands, I dampened the cloth in the herb-infused water and began washing his shoulders, keeping my touch as impersonal as possible despite the intimate nature of the act. "What happens now?" I asked, focusing intently on a droplet of water tracing the curve of his shoulder. "If what you're saying is true, It is, he assured me. Then what? I can't just suddenly become someone else. Even if I am what you claim, I don't know how to be an alpha female. I don't know anything about the Moonriver pack or its history. Adrian captured my wrist gently as I moved the cloth across his chest. His touch sent warmth spreading up my arm. You're already here, he said softly. You've always been her. They just convinced you that you weren't. Our eyes met, and something passed between us. A current of recognition, of possibility. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine it, being someone of worth, of power, of lineage. Being someone who belonged at his side rather than cleaning his floors. The fantasy evaporated as quickly as the steam around us, the ceremony. I reminded him, pulling my hand from his grasp. You should prepare. They'll be expecting you. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Yes, they will. But I don't think the ceremony will proceed quite as they've planned. Alarm flared in my chest. What do you mean? The Moonstone ceremony traditionally presents eligible Omegas to visiting Alphas, he said, rising from the bath. I quickly turned away, grabbing a drying cloth and holding it out blindly behind me. I felt him take it, heard the soft sounds of him drying himself. But what many have forgotten, he continued, is the ceremony's true purpose, to forge alliances between packs through compatible unions. It was never meant to be exclusively for Omegas. I heard him moving around the room, the rustle of fabric as he dressed. You can turn around now, he said, amusement in his voice. When I did, he stood fully clothed in formal attire, black trousers and a midnight blue jacket adorned with silver embroidery that caught the light like stars. The royal colors. He looked every inch the Alpha King. I don't understand what you're planning, I said. He stepped closer, reaching out to touch my cheek with gentle fingers. You will attend the ceremony tonight, Charlotte. Not as a servant, but as my honored guest. Panic flooded me. I can't. I have nothing to wear. I don't know how to act. They'll never allow it. They have no choice, he said simply. I am the Alpha King, and tonight, you will begin to reclaim your birthright. Before I could protest further, another knock sounded at the door, more insistent this time. Your Majesty, Alpha Bennett's voice called through the wood. The ceremony begins in 30 minutes. We must speak before then. Adrian's eyes never left mine. Enter, he commanded. The door opened to reveal our pack Alpha, a man I'd spent my life both fearing and avoiding. His gaze swept the room, narrowing when he saw me standing too close to the Alpha King, still in my servant's dress but clearly not engaged in any servant's task. Your Majesty, he began carefully. I see Charlotte has attended you. I hope her service has been adequate. More than adequate, Adrian replied coolly. In fact, I've made a decision. Charlotte will be attending tonight's ceremony as my personal guest. I watched the blood drain from Bennett's face. That's most unusual, Your Majesty. Charlotte is not among the presented Omegas. She has duties elsewhere, and frankly, she's not properly prepared for such an honor. Then prepare her. Adrian's voice was velvet over steel. Find her suitable attire. I want her seated at my right hand during the ceremony. Bennett's composure slipped for just a moment, revealing naked panic before he masked it again. Of course, Your Majesty, if that is your wish. But may I ask what has prompted this unusual interest in one of our lowliest Omegas? Adrian smiled, a predator's smile that never reached his eyes. You may not. He turned to me. Charlotte, you will go with Beta Irene to prepare. I'll see you at the ceremony. As if summoned by her name, Irene appeared in the doorway behind Bennett, her face a perfect mask of subservience hiding what I knew was rage and confusion. Take Charlotte to the royal guest chamber, Adrian instructed her. Provide her with appropriate attire for tonight's ceremony. She is to be treated with the respect due my personal guest. Irene's eyes widened fractionally, but she bowed. As you wish, Your Majesty. As I moved to follow her, Adrian caught my hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that drew a strangled sound from Bennett's throat. Until tonight, Charlotte Moonriver, he said, deliberately using my full name. I felt Bennett's shock like a physical blow as I followed Irene from the room. The door closed behind us, but not before I heard Adrian's voice, low and threatening. Now, Bennett, let's discuss why the daughter of Elena Moonriver has been scrubbing your floors for 15 years. The silence between Beta Irene and me stretched taut as we walked down the corridor. Her scent betrayed her emotions: anger, confusion, and most prominently, fear. Her perfect posture seemed brittle now, as if one wrong move might shatter her composure entirely. "In here," she finally said, opening the door to a guest chamber I'd cleaned just yesterday, but never imagined entering as anything other than a servant. The room was smaller than Adrian's royal suite, but still luxurious by any standard: a 4-poster bed with silk hangings, a dressing table with an ornate silver mirror, and a wardrobe that Irene now approached with barely concealed reluctance. "The Alpha King seems quite taken with you," she remarked, her voice strained for casualness as she flung open the wardrobe doors. "How unexpected." I remained silent, unsure what to say. The events of the past hour had upended everything I thought I knew about myself, about my place in the world. Part of me wanted to confide in Irene, to seek confirmation or denial of Adrian's claims about my heritage, but the cold calculation in her eyes reminded me of her years of casual cruelty. She was not my ally. "You do realize he's just amusing himself, don't you?" she continued when I didn't respond, rifling through the hanging gowns with unnecessary force. "Powerful alphas like him sometimes enjoy these little diversions, elevating the lowest among us for their entertainment." Her words stung, but less than they might have an hour ago. "Is that what you think?" I asked quietly. Irene turned, a midnight blue gown in her hands that matched Adrian's formal attire almost exactly. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "What else could it possibly be? Look at you, Charlotte. You're nobody. Nothing. You always have been." But for the first time in my life, I wondered if that was a lie. A lie I'd been fed since childhood. A lie designed to keep me small, controllable, ignorant of power that might be my birthright. "Perhaps you're right," I said, giving her nothing. Her eyes narrowed at my calm response. "Arms up," she commanded, approaching with the gown. I obeyed, allowing her to slip the heavy silk over my head. The fabric slid cool against my skin, more luxurious than anything I'd ever worn. Irene worked in silence, fastening tiny pearl buttons that ran down the back, her fingers quick and efficient if not gentle. "Sit," she directed, pointing to the dressing table. I perched on the velvet stool as she unwound my simple knot of hair, brushing it with brisk, almost painful strokes. I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The gown's deep blue made my pale skin glow and brought out flecks of gold in my green eyes I'd never noticed before. As my light blonde hair fell around my shoulders, freed from its practical restraint, I looked different. Not beautiful, perhaps, but changed, as if some essential truth about me had begun to emerge from hiding. "What do you know about the Moonriver Pack?" I asked suddenly. Irene's hands froze in my hair for just an instant before resuming their work. "An old pack from the north," she said carefully. "Destroyed during the territory wars years ago." "Why do you ask?" "Just something the Alpha King mentioned," I replied, watching her face in the mirror. A flash of something, recognition, alarm, crossed her features before she masked it. "The Alpha King spoke to you of the Moonriver Pack?" Her voice was too casual, too controlled. "He seemed interested in my mother's pendant," I said, touching the silver wolf at my throat. Irene's reflection paled slightly. "That old thing? It's just a cheap trinket, nothing more." But her scent betrayed her, fear, sharp and acrid, filling the space between us. She knew something. Whether she knew everything was unclear, but she knew more than she was saying. "There," she said abruptly, stepping back from my now arranged hair. "You're as presentable as possible given the circumstances." She glanced at a small clock on the mantel. 10 minutes until the ceremony begins. I'll return to escort you when it's time." She moved toward the door, her normally graceful movement stiff with tension. "Irene," I called after her. "How long have you known Alpha Bennett?" She paused, hand on the doorknob. "All my life. My family has served as his betas for generations. And my mother? Did you know her too?" Irene turned slightly, her profile sharp in the dim light. "I knew of her. She was before my time." A pause. She was not well regarded in the pack. Why? I pressed. She was an outsider, taken in during the territory wars as an act of charity, her lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. Rather like you, in fact. With that parting barb, she slipped out the door, leaving me alone with my reflection and my thoughts. I stood, moving to the window that overlooked the ceremonial grounds. Torches were being lit in a wide circle around an ancient stone altar, the moonstone altar that gave the ceremony its name. Pack members were already gathering, dressed in their finest, an air of excitement and anticipation hovering over them like mist. The eligible Omegas would be presented there, displayed before Adrian and other visiting Alphas like prizes to be claimed. And I would be seated at Adrian's right hand, throwing their carefully orchestrated event into chaos. I touched my mother's pendant, tracing the howling wolf with my fingertip. If what Adrian had told me was true, this was no simple jewelry but a symbol of royal lineage, my lineage. Not the orphaned Omega, but the daughter of a royal alpha female, possibly an alpha female myself. But why would the pack hide this from me? Why keep me ignorant, subjugated, believing myself worthless? If I truly carried the Moon River blood, what did they fear? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Too soon for Irene to return, I crossed to the door and opened it cautiously. A young girl stood there, Elise, one of the kitchen helpers who had always been kinder to me than most. Her eyes widened as she took in my transformed appearance. "Charlotte?" she whispered. "Is it true? The Alpha King has chosen you as his guest?" I nodded, stepping back to allow her inside. She slipped in, closing the door quickly behind her. "Everyone's talking about it," she said, her voice hushed with excitement. "Beta Marcus is furious. He's saying you must have bewitched the Alpha King somehow." Beta Marcus, Irene's brother and Alpha Bennett's right hand, a man who had always regarded me with particular disdain. "The Pack Alphas are in an uproar," Elise continued. "Some are saying it's an insult to present you alongside the chosen Omegas." "I'm not being presented," I clarified. "I'm just attending." Elise shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Your presence beside the Alpha King will be seen as his favor, and that changes everything." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" She glanced nervously at the door. "I shouldn't be here, but I had to warn you. I overheard Beta Marcus and some of the others talking." She lowered her voice further. "They're planning something for after the ceremony. Something about dealing with the problem once and for all. Once the Alpha King leaves tomorrow." My mouth went dry. "They mean me." "I'm the problem." Elise nodded, fear sharp in her scent. "Be careful tonight, Charlotte. Watch what you eat and drink. Stay close to the Alpha King while you can." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why help me?" A sad smile touched her lips. "My grandmother used to tell stories about the Moonriver Pack, about their alpha female who disappeared during the wars. She always said the woman had eyes like yours, green with flecks of gold, like sunlight through forest leaves." Before I could respond, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Elise squeezed my hand once, then slipped back toward the door. "Be safe," she whispered, and was gone. Seconds later, Irene entered without knocking. "It's time," she announced, her eyes sweeping critically over my appearance. "Remember your place tonight, Charlotte. King's guest or not, you're still just a serving girl playing dress-up." I followed her through corridors now empty, everyone already gathered at the ceremonial grounds. The night air was cool against my skin as we stepped outside, the scent of wood smoke and autumn leaves mingling with the nervous excitement of the assembled pack. The ceremonial area had been transformed into a spectacle of light and shadow, torches flickering, moonlight spilling over the ancient stone altar at the center. Alpha Bennett stood on a raised platform, magnificent in ceremonial furs despite the coldness in his eyes. Beside him were empty chairs, waiting for Adrian and presumably now me. As we approached, the crowd parted, conversations dying as heads turned to stare. I felt their shock, their outrage, their confusion at the sight of me in royal blue silk rather than a servant's garb. My cheeks burned, but I kept my chin up, my mother's pendant cool against my throat. And then I saw him, Adrian, standing at the edge of the gathering, his powerful presence drawing all eyes. He watched my approach with an intensity that made my heart stutter, his amber gaze never wavering. When I reached him, he extended his hand to me, a simple gesture that sent ripples of shocked whispers through the assembled pack. "Charlotte," he said, his voice carrying in the sudden silence, "you look as befits your bloodline." I placed my trembling hand in his, feeling the warm strength of his grip. "Thank you, Your Majesty." His lips twitched slightly at my formality. "Come," he said, leading me toward the platform where Bennett waited, his face a mask of careful neutrality that couldn't quite hide the tension in his jaw. We climbed the steps together, Adrian's hand at the small of my back, a gesture of both support and possession that wasn't lost on anyone watching. Bennett bowed stiffly. "Your Majesty," he greeted Adrian, deliberately ignoring me. "We are honored by your presence at our humble ceremony." Adrian's smile was cold. "Yes, I imagine you are." He guided me to the chair at his right, seating himself between Bennett and me, a subtle shield. From this elevated position, I could see the entire gathering. The eligible Omegas stood in a group near the stone altar, all beautiful in shimmering gowns, their expressions varying from confusion to outright hostility as they looked at me. Among the crowd, I caught sight of Beta Marcus, his face dark with barely controlled rage. Beside him, several pack alphas huddled in conversation, shooting glances toward me that made my skin crawl. Elise's warning echoed in my mind. They were planning something that would ensure I never rose above my station again. The ceremony began with Bennett's formal welcome, his words flowing over me like water as I remained acutely aware of Adrian beside me, of the pack's stares, of the danger that might await me after tonight. The ritual itself was ancient. Each Omega was presented before the stone altar, their lineage recited, their attributes praised. Each visiting alpha could then indicate interest, with negotiations to follow in the days to come. Throughout it all, Adrian remained silent, showing no interest in any of the presented Omegas, a fact that caused increasing tension as the ceremony progressed. I could feel Bennett's growing anxiety beside him, could smell the distress from the Omega families, whose daughters were being effectively ignored by the most powerful alpha in attendance. "Is none of them to your liking, Your Majesty?" Bennett finally asked during a brief pause in the presentations, his voice carefully modulated to hide his concern. Adrian's gaze remained on the stone altar, its smooth surface gleaming in the moonlight. "The moonstone altar has interesting properties, doesn't it, Bennett?" he replied, ignoring the question entirely. "Ancient magic. It can reveal truth when all else conceals it." Bennett stiffened beside him. "Old superstitions, Your Majesty. Nothing more." "Is it?" Adrian turned to me then, his expression unreadable. "Charlotte, would you walk with me to the altar?" A hush fell over the gathering. This was a deviation from the ceremony's traditional progression, a breach of protocol. Bennett half rose from his seat. "Your Majesty, that's not— I don't recall asking for your input, Bennett." Adrian cut him off, his voice pleasant but edged with steel. He stood, offering me his hand once more. With my heart thundering in my chest, I placed my fingers in his and rose. Together, we descended the platform steps and moved toward the stone altar. The crowd parting before us like water, the eligible Omegas watched with wide eyes as we passed, their families murmuring in confusion. I could feel Beta Marcus tracking our movement, his anger a palpable force. Whatever they had planned for me after the ceremony, this unexpected development was not part of it. When we reached the ancient stone, Adrian guided me to stand before it. The moonstone altar was a massive slab of smooth, pale stone that seemed to capture and amplify the moonlight falling upon it. Ancient symbols were carved into its edges, symbols that matched those on my mother's pendant. "Place your hands on the stone," Adrian instructed quietly, his voice for me alone. I hesitated, suddenly afraid of what might happen, of what truth might be revealed. "Trust me," he murmured. Slowly I laid my palms flat on the cool surface of the altar. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, a warmth began to spread from the stone into my hands, up my arms, suffusing my entire body. The pendant at my throat grew hot against my skin, and the stone beneath my palms began to glow with a soft, silvery light that grew brighter with each passing second. Gasps rose from the watching crowd. I heard Bennett curse softly from the platform behind us. The light continued to intensify until it surrounded me in a nimbus of silver radiance. Something stirred within me, a power I'd never felt before, a strength I'd never known I possessed. My senses sharpened abruptly. I could hear heartbeats around me, could smell emotions with new clarity, could feel a connection to the moon above that pulled at my blood like a tide. "What's happening?" I whispered, my voice sounding different even to my own ears, stronger, more resonant. Adrian moved to stand beside me, his hand covering one of mine on the stone. "The altar recognizes Moon River blood," he said. "It's awakening what they suppressed in you all these years." The light pulsed once, blindingly bright, then receded, sinking into the stone and into my skin like water into parched earth. As it faded, I felt changed, as if some essential part of me that had been sleeping my entire life had finally awakened. I turned to face the stunned crowd, seeing them with new eyes, their scents, their postures, their expressions, all revealed truths I'd never been able to read before. Bennett's fear, Marcus's hatred, Irene's envy, and underlying it all, a web of lies that had kept me bound and blind for years. Impossible. Bennett breathed, but I heard him clearly despite the distance between us. "We made sure—" "Not thoroughly enough," Adrian replied, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. He turned to address the assembled pack, his hand still covering mine on the stone. "Allow me to properly introduce Charlotte Moonriver, daughter of Elena Moonriver, granddaughter of Alpha Magnus Moonriver, and last surviving heir to the Moonriver Alpha lineage." The declaration fell like a thunderbolt among the pack. Some of the older members stepped back, crossing protective signs over their hearts. Others simply stared in shock or disbelief. Bennett remained frozen on the platform, his face ashen. "The Moonriver line is extinct," he finally managed, desperation in his voice. "This is some trick." "The Moonstone doesn't lie," Adrian cut him off. "As you well know, Bennett, as you've always known." I looked at Adrian, understanding dawning. "You knew before you ever arrived," I said quietly. "You came looking for me specifically." His amber eyes met mine, something like regret in their depths. "I suspected. I've been searching for Elena's child for years. When rumors reached me of a pack keeping an Omega with Moon River coloring as a virtual prisoner, I had to see for myself." "Why?" I asked, the question encompassing everything. Why search for me? Why care about my mother's lineage? Why expose the truth now? Before he could answer, a snarl ripped through the air. Beta Marcus lunged forward, a silver dagger gleaming in his hand, his face contorted with rage. "No more Moonriver witches," he shouted. "We end this now!" Time seemed to slow as Marcus charged toward me, silver blade catching the moonlight. I should have been terrified. I had never faced violence, never learned to defend myself. Yet something primal and newly awakened inside me responded with startling clarity. I sidestepped his attack with a grace I'd never possessed before, the movement feeling as natural as breathing. Marcus stumbled past me, his momentum carrying him forward as his blade sliced through empty air, where I had stood a heartbeat earlier. Before he could recover, Adrian moved. So fast he seemed to blur. His hand closed around Marcus's wrist, twisting until the beta dropped the blade with a cry of pain. In the next instant, Adrian had him pinned against the moonstone altar, one hand at his throat. "You dare?" Adrian's voice was barely human, a growl that resonated through the stunned silence. "You dare attack her in my presence?" Marcus struggled uselessly against the Alpha King's grip. "She'll destroy everything," he gasped. "The Moonriver witch blood—" "Silence!" Adrian's command carried alpha power that made everyone present flinch, including me. He turned his gaze toward Bennett, who remained frozen on the platform. "Control your beta, Bennett, or I will execute him where he stands for this treachery." Bennett descended the steps slowly, his composure cracking with each movement. "Marcus acted without my knowledge or consent, Your Majesty," he said. But the lie was evident in his scent, in the slight tremor of his hands. Adrian's laugh was cold. More lies, Bennett? Have you not learned yet? The truth always emerges. He released Marcus, who collapsed at the base of the altar, gasping for breath. Perhaps it's time everyone here learned the full truth of what happened 15 years ago. The crowd had drawn back, forming a wide circle around us. The ceremonial presentations forgotten, all attention focused on the drama unfolding before the ancient stone. I stood apart, aware of a strange energy still flowing through me from the altar's awakening touch, power and knowledge unfurling in my blood like smoke. Charlotte, Adrian extended his hand to me once more. Come here. I moved to his side, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon me. Standing beside him, I suddenly realized I had grown taller. My body physically changing as whatever suppressants they had used on me began to lose their hold. I now reached Adrian's shoulder, my frame stronger, my presence more commanding. The Moon River pack was not destroyed in battle as most believe, Adrian began, his voice carrying to every ear. They were betrayed, poisoned during a peace negotiation by those who feared their power and coveted their territory. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the history they had been taught. Elena Moonriver escaped the massacre, heavily pregnant with the pack heir, Adrian continued. She sought sanctuary with the one pack she believed would honor the old codes of protection. His gaze fixed on Bennett. Your pack. Your father's pack. Bennett's face had gone the color of old paper. Ancient history, he muttered. What does it matter now? It matters. Adrian's voice hardened. Because instead of protection, your father saw opportunity. He took in the pregnant alpha female, promised her safety, and then betrayed her the moment her child was born. My hands began to tremble as I finally understood. They killed her, I whispered. They killed my mother. Adrian nodded, sorrow in his eyes. Not immediately. First, they needed to ensure you would never become a threat. They began dosing you with suppressants from infancy, herbs that would stunt your alpha nature, keep you weak, make you believe you were an omega. Horror washed through me, followed by a wave of rage so powerful it nearly buckled my knees. And my mother? What happened to her? Bennett stepped forward, desperation making him reckless. She was dangerous. The Moonriver females have always been unstable, unpredictable. The old magic in their bloodline made them powerful. Adrian finished for him. Too powerful for your father's comfort. So he had Elena killed once he was certain the suppressants were working on her child. Then he spread the story that he had mercifully taken in an orphaned Omega from a destroyed pack. The truth landed like physical blows. My entire life had been built on lies. My nature suppressed, my heritage hidden, my potential deliberately crushed. And my mother had died trying to protect me, believing she had found safety for her child. Why keep me alive at all? I asked, the question directed at Bennett. Why not kill me too? Beta Irene stepped forward from the crowd, her voice cold. Insurance, she said. A Moonriver heir, properly controlled, could be valuable. Your bloodline carries power that could be harvested, used. Her smile was cruel. And if other Moonriver survivors ever returned seeking vengeance, you would be the perfect bargaining chip. Like keeping a defanged wolf as a pet, I said, understanding blooming bitter in my chest. Precisely, Adrian agreed. But they miscalculated. The suppressants were effective, but not perfect. Your true nature has been emerging slowly over years, which is why they had to keep increasing your doses, why they kept you isolated from others who might notice the changes. I touched the pendant at my throat, remembering how my mother had pressed it into my tiny hands, how I had clung to it all these years without understanding its significance. She knew what they would do to her, I realized. She left me this so I would someday understand who I truly am. Adrian nodded. The Moonriver pendant is more than jewelry. It's part of the pack's magic, a connection to the bloodline that couldn't be completely suppressed. From the edge of the circle, an elder stepped forward, Amara, the pack's oldest member, her white hair gleaming in the moonlight. I remember, she said, her voice quavering with age but clear in the silence. I remember the night Elena Moonriver came to us, belly swollen with child, seeking sanctuary. She was beautiful and terrible with power. The old woman's eyes found mine. You have her look about you now, child. The same light. The same fire. Bennett snarled at the elder. Be silent, crone. No more silence, Amara countered, surprising strength in her frail frame as she stood straighter. No more lies. I kept my peace when your father murdered the Moon River Alpha. I stayed silent when you continued the deception with her child, but I will not stand by as you attempt to extinguish the last of an ancient bloodline. Other elders joined her, stepping forward from the crowd. We remember the Moon River Pack, one said. They were guardians of the old ways, keepers of magic that benefited all packs. Their destruction was a tragedy born of fear and greed, another added. Bennett looked around wildly, seeing his control of the pack slipping away with each revelation. The Moon River line is tainted, he shouted. Their females carry unpredictable power. They cannot be controlled, cannot be trusted, cannot be controlled by you, you mean? Adrian corrected quietly. His hand found mine, our fingers intertwining in a gesture that sent fresh whispers through the watching pack. The Moonstone ceremony has revealed the truth tonight, as it was always meant to do. Charlotte Moon River stands before you, awakened to her heritage. Under my protection. Bennett's eyes narrowed as he looked between us. So that's your game, he said. You want the Moon River magic for yourself. You want to claim her and control her power. Adrian's laugh was genuine this time. You still don't understand, Bennett. I knew Elena Moon River. She was promised to me before your father's treachery tore our packs apart. His gaze softened as it met mine. I've spent 15 years searching for her child, not to control, but to restore. The implications of his words settled over me like a mantle. I was not just some orphaned Omega, but the last heir of a powerful bloodline, a bloodline that had once been allied with Adrian's own pack through a promised union. What happens now? I asked, addressing Adrian but aware of the entire pack hanging on our exchange. Justice, he replied simply. For your mother, for you, for the Moon River Pack. A challenge howl tore from Bennett's throat, the formal sound of an alpha defending his territory and position. This is my pack, he snarled. My territory. You have no authority here, Alpha King or not. Adrian's expression remained calm. You violated the sacred laws of sanctuary when your family murdered Elena Moon River. You continued that violation by suppressing and abusing her heir. By our oldest laws, your claim to this territory is forfeit. You can't, Bennett began. I can, Adrian interrupted, but I won't be the one to challenge you. He turned to me, his amber eyes intense. That right belongs to Charlotte. Shock rippled through me. Challenge him? I don't know how to fight. I've never... You don't need to, Adrian said softly. The Moonstone will fight for you. He guided me back to the altar, placing my hands once more upon its cool surface. The old magic recognizes its own, he murmured. Trust your blood. Trust your heritage. As my palms connected with the stone, the now familiar warmth flowed into me. Stronger this time. More insistent. The silver light returned, spreading up my arms and across my body until I stood bathed in its radiance. The pendant at my throat pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, growing hot against my skin. What you feel is your birthright, Adrian said, his voice reaching me through the growing tide of power. The Moon River Alpha females have always drawn their strength from the moon itself. The light intensified, and with it came knowledge, memories not my own, but carried in my bloodline. I saw my mother, proud and strong, leading her pack before the betrayal. I saw my grandfather, commanding the respect of alphas across the territory. I saw generations of Moon River women, their connection to moon magic flowing down through the centuries to me. Bennett backed away, fear overriding his rage. Stop this, he commanded, but his alpha voice held no power over me now. You kept me scrubbing floors, I said, my voice carrying a new resonance. You made me believe I was nothing while you lived in the territory stolen from my family. The memories continued to flow, showing me exactly what had happened to my mother, how she had been weakened through gradual poisoning after my birth, how she had fought to her last breath to protect me. You murdered my mother, I continued, the silver light pulsing brighter with my rising anger. You stole my heritage, my identity, my power. It wasn't me, Bennett protested. It was my father, and you continued his legacy of lies. I cut him off. You knew exactly who I was every time you treated me like dirt beneath your feet. The light surrounding me suddenly condensed, forming a visible silvery aura that outlined my body like armor. I stepped away from the altar, the power no longer tethered to the stone, but fully embodied within me. Bennett snarled, dropping into a fighting stance. I won't be defeated by a servant girl playing at being an alpha, he growled, lunging toward me. I didn't think. I reacted with instincts I hadn't known I possessed, until this moment. Sidestepping his attack, I caught his arm and used his momentum to throw him to the ground. The move felt natural, as if my body had always known how to fight, but had been prevented from accessing that knowledge. Bennett recovered quickly, circling me with the experience of an alpha, who had defended his position many times. You have no training, no experience, he taunted. A few parlor tricks with moonlight won't save you. I have something better than training, I replied, feeling the power of generations of Moonriver alphas flowing through my veins. I have truth. He charged again, and this time when our bodies connected, the silver light flared between us. Bennett screamed, recoiling as if burned. Angry red welts appeared where the light had touched him, the visible manifestation of justice long delayed. The Moonriver magic recognizes those who have wronged it, Adrian said from the edge of the circle, his voice carrying to all present. The old powers remember betrayal. Bennett looked around wildly, seeing support among the pack dwindling with each passing moment. Some had already dropped to their knees, heads bowed in submission, not to him, but to me. Others watched with expressions ranging from awe to calculation, sensing the imminent shift in power. I am still alpha here, Bennett roared, desperation making him reckless. He pulled a hidden blade from his boot. Silver, like the one Marcus had wielded, designed to combat supernatural power. Before he could strike, I raised my hand instinctively. The silver light shot from my palm in a concentrated beam, striking the blade and shattering it into glittering fragments. The force of the magic knocked Bennett backward, sending him sprawling at the foot of the moonstone altar. I approached him slowly, the pack parting before me. You have a choice, I said, standing over his prone form. Submit or leave. But either way, your time as alpha of this pack is over. For a moment, rage and hatred contorted his features. Then, with the survival instinct of a cornered animal, he lowered his eyes. I submit, he ground out through clenched teeth. Relief and disbelief mingled within me. It was over. In the space of a single night, I had transformed from the pack's lowest member to its acknowledged alpha. The silver light gradually receded, though I could still feel the power humming beneath my skin, ready to be called upon if needed. Adrian moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. What will you do with him? He asked quietly. I considered Bennett, still kneeling in defeat. Execution would be justified under pack law for his family's crimes. Banishment was traditional for defeated alphas, but neither felt right to me. Stand up, I commanded, my voice carrying the unmistakable resonance of an alpha female. Bennett rose slowly, keeping his eyes lowered. You and your family stole 15 years of my life, I said. You will spend the next 15 years in service to this pack, not as alpha, but as its most humble member. You will know what it means to serve rather than be served. Murmurs of approval rippled through the watching pack. Justice with mercy, a sign of strength rather than weakness. I turned to face the assembled pack members, my pack now, by right of blood and victory. They watched me with varying expressions. Wonder, wariness, curiosity, calculation. Winning the challenge had been only the first step. Building loyalty would take time. The lies end tonight, I announced. This territory returns to the Moonriver Pack, with alliances to be forged anew under truth rather than deception. Elder Amara stepped forward, lowering herself carefully to one knee. Alpha Charlotte Moonriver, she acknowledged, the formal title sending a shiver through me. The pack welcomes your ascension. One by one, others followed. Betas, Omegas, even the rival alphas who had come for the ceremony. They knelt, acknowledging the shift in power, the restoration of an ancient bloodline. Among them, I saw Elise, tears tracking down her cheeks as she smiled at me. Only when the submissions were complete did I turn back to Adrian, finding his amber eyes warm with something deeper than approval. "You knew this would happen," I said quietly. "You planned for this outcome when you came here." "I hoped," he corrected. "But the power was always yours to claim or reject. I merely created the opportunity for truth to emerge." Around us, the pack began to disperse, moving in small groups back toward the pack house. The moonstone ceremony had concluded in a way none could have anticipated, with an awakened Moon River heir reclaiming her birthright. Tomorrow would bring questions, adjustments, new hierarchies to establish. But for now, the immediate crisis had passed. Beta Irene approached cautiously, her previous arrogance replaced with careful deference. "The pack house awaits your instructions, Alpha," she said formally. "Shall we prepare the Alpha chambers for you?" I glanced at the massive building that had been my home, yet never my home, where I had scrubbed floors and slept in servant quarters while the truth of my heritage remained hidden. The thought of sleeping beneath that roof tonight, even in the Alpha's chambers, felt wrong somehow. "No," I decided. "I'll return tomorrow to address the pack fully. Tonight I need time to process everything that's happened." Irene nodded, withdrawing without argument, a marked change from her previous behavior toward me. As she departed, Adrian stepped closer, his voice pitched for my ears alone. "My camp is established in the northern clearing," he said. "You would be welcome there tonight, away from complications." The offer was tempting, a neutral space, protection, and perhaps answers to the many questions still swirling in my mind. Questions about my mother, about the Moonriver legacy, about Adrian's connection to both. "Yes," I agreed. "I think that would be best." As we turned to leave the ceremonial grounds, I caught sight of Beta Marcus being restrained by several pack members, his earlier attack not forgotten in the chaos that followed. I paused, considering his fate. "Lock him away until morning," I instructed the guards. "I'll determine his punishment tomorrow." With that final command, I left the place where I had entered as a servant and departed as an Alpha, Adrian walking at my side, equal to equal. Behind us, whispers followed. Speculation, wonder, and the beginning of a new legend. The old servant girl was gone. Charlotte Moonriver had taken her place. The northern clearing where Adrian had established his camp was a tranquil space beneath ancient pines, far enough from the pack house to feel like another world. Guards nodded respectfully as we approached, their eyes widening slightly at my transformed appearance but asking no questions. A large pavilion tent stood at the center of the encampment, illuminated from within by the warm glow of lanterns. "My temporary home," Adrian explained, holding back the tent's entrance flap. "Not as grand as the royal palace, but I've always preferred simplicity when traveling." The interior was surprisingly comfortable, plush rugs covering the ground, a portable brazier providing warmth, and a sectioned area that presumably served as his sleeping quarters. A table held maps, documents, and a decanter of amber liquid that caught the lamplight. "Wine?" he offered, moving toward the decanter. I nodded, suddenly aware of how parched the night's events had left me. He poured 2 glasses, handing one to me before gesturing toward cushioned seats arranged near the brazier. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had transpired settling between us. The power awakened by the moonstone still hummed beneath my skin. Unfamiliar, yet somehow deeply right, like remembering something long forgotten. "You must have questions," Adrian finally said, his amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "Hundreds," I admitted, taking a slow sip of the wine. Its sweetness bloomed on my tongue. Another new sensation, as if my senses had sharpened along with the awakening of my true nature. But I hardly know where to begin. Adrian leaned forward slightly. "Perhaps with your mother," he suggested gently. "I knew her before everything changed." "You said she was promised to you," I ventured. "Was it a political arrangement or—" A smile touched his lips, sad yet warm with memory, both political and personal. Our packs had been allies for generations. The union between the Alpha King and a Moonriver heir would have strengthened both bloodlines. His gaze grew distant, but it wasn't merely political for me. Elena was extraordinary, fierce, brilliant, kind in ways that surprised everyone who knew her. "You loved her," I realized. I did, he acknowledged simply. We had grown up knowing we would one day be mated, but the affection between us developed naturally. By the time we reached adulthood, what had been arranged had also become desired. I traced the rim of my glass with one finger. What happened? How did she end up here, seeking sanctuary? Adrian's expression darkened. The territory wars erupted just weeks before our official mating ceremony. My father was killed in the initial conflict, forcing me to assume leadership earlier than expected. In the chaos that followed, the Moon River pack was betrayed. He took a long drink from his glass. While I was securing our northern borders, enemies struck at the heart of their territory. They used silver-laced poison during what was supposed to be a peace negotiation. Who? I asked, anger stirring at the thought of such treachery. A coalition led by Bennett's father, Alpha Devon, Adrian replied. They feared the combined strength of our packs once our mating was formalized. The Moonriver magic had always been powerful, but unpredictable to outsiders, combined with the military strength of my pack. He shrugged. They struck first, hoping to eliminate the threat, but my mother escaped. He nodded. Elena was visiting a sacred Moon River site during the attack, a tradition for females of the bloodline before their mating ceremony. When she returned, she found devastation. Most of her pack had been slaughtered. Those who survived were scattered in hiding. And she was carrying me, I said softly. Yes. She discovered her pregnancy in the aftermath. She tried to reach my territory, but Bennett's father had hunting parties searching for any Moonriver survivors. In desperation, she sought sanctuary with his pack, hoping that even enemies would honor the ancient code protecting pregnant females. The cruelty of it struck me anew. My mother, alone and pregnant, forced to seek protection from the very people who had destroyed her pack. Why didn't she tell them who she was? I asked. Surely she knew the risk. Adrian's expression was grave. She presented herself as a common wolf separated from her pack during the chaos. I believe she hoped to recover her strength and escape with you once you were born. He set down his glass. But childbirth weakened her, and somehow, Bennett's father discovered her true identity. Perhaps the pendant gave her away, or perhaps her power began to manifest as she recovered. So they began poisoning her, I concluded, the knowledge bitter in my mouth, and dosing me with suppressants from birth. Adrian nodded. By the time I tracked her to this territory, she was already gone. Bennett's father claimed they had taken in a stray Omega who died of fever after giving birth. He presented you as a common orphan they had mercifully adopted, and you believed him? I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. Pain flickered across Adrian's features. I had no proof otherwise. You were just a baby, already being suppressed. Your scent showed no trace of Moonriver blood, no hint of alpha nature, and the territory wars were still raging. I couldn't stay to investigate further. I stood, moving to the tent's entrance to push back the flap. Outside, the night was clear, the moon hanging full and bright above the pines. Its light seemed to reach for me, silver tendrils connecting to something primal within. I've been living a lie my entire life, I said quietly. Treated as less than nothing by the people who murdered my mother and stole my birthright. Adrian came to stand beside me, not touching but close enough that his warmth reached me. And yet you showed mercy tonight. You could have executed Bennett for his family's crimes. Many would say he deserved it. I considered this. More death wouldn't bring my mother back. And this pack? They're not all guilty. Most had no idea who I truly was. That compassion, he said softly, is pure Elena. She had the same quality, strength, tempered with mercy. I turned to face him. What happens now? I've reclaimed my position as alpha of this territory, but I know nothing about leading a pack. And the Moonriver magic, I don't understand how to control it, how to use it properly. I can help with that, Adrian offered. Stay here tonight, and tomorrow we can address the pack together. In the coming weeks, I can send advisors, teachers who understand the old ways. I studied his face in the moonlight, seeing the years etched there, the burden of leadership he had carried since youth. And then what? You return to your kingdom, and I remain here with a pack that only follows me out of fear or duty? He was silent for a moment. That's one possibility, he finally said. Or you could consider another path. Which is? His eyes held mine steadily. The alliance that was planned between our packs, between Elena Moonriver and myself, it could still be honored. Through you. My heart stuttered in my chest. You mean a political alliance between our territories? I mean a union, he clarified. Not immediately. You need time to grow into your power, to learn who you truly are without the suppressants clouding your nature. But eventually, he paused. The connection I felt with Elena, I see echoes of it in you, not just in your appearance or your bloodline, but in your spirit. Your courage tonight, facing Bennett, reclaiming your heritage. It was magnificent. Heat rose to my cheeks at his words, at the admiration in his gaze. You barely know me, I pointed out. One night of drama and revelation doesn't provide much foundation for a lifetime commitment. A smile touched his lips. True. Which is why I'm proposing something more gradual. He took a careful step closer. Allow me to court you, Charlotte Moonriver. Properly, with time and patience. Let us discover if what I sense between us is real, or merely the ghost of what might have been with your mother. The proposal was both overwhelming and strangely right. Since the moment his eyes had found mine across the grand hall, me with my mop, him with his power, something had sparked between us, not just his recognition of my suppressed nature, but something more personal, more profound. I don't know the first thing about being courted, I admitted, especially by an alpha king. His laugh was warm, genuine. And I've spent 15 years so focused on finding Elena's child that I've forgotten how to court anyone at all. Perhaps we can learn together. The moon caught his profile, highlighting the strength of his jaw, the curve of his lips. Despite everything that had happened tonight, or perhaps because of it, I felt drawn to him in a way I couldn't fully articulate. Yes, I decided. I accept your proposal of courtship, Adrian. But slowly, as you said, I need time. Relief and pleasure mingled in his expression. Time you shall have, and freedom to change your mind at any point. He reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. The simple touch sent warmth cascading through me, along with a sense of rightness that resonated with the newly awakened power in my blood. Tomorrow will be challenging, he warned, letting his hand fall away. The pack will need reassurance. Some will resist your leadership, testing your resolve. Others will seek to curry favor with insincere loyalty. I nodded, turning again to gaze at the moon. I know, but for tonight... I trailed off, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. The events of the day, the magical awakening, the confrontation, all had drained me more thoroughly than I had realized. Adrian noticed immediately. You need rest, he said. I've had quarters prepared for you, separate but nearby. He gestured toward a smaller tent visible through the trees, its entrance guarded by two of his most trusted warriors. The consideration touched me. He could have used my vulnerability, my uncertainty, to push for greater intimacy. Instead, he was giving me space, respect, time to adjust to my new reality. Thank you, I said simply. He walked me to the smaller tent, stopping at its entrance. Sleep well, Charlotte Moonriver, he said softly. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for both of us. As he turned to leave, I caught his hand impulsively. Adrian, wait. When he faced me again, I rose on tiptoe and pressed my lips gently to his cheek. Thank you for finding me, for setting me free. Something flickered in his amber eyes. Surprise, tenderness, and a carefully banked heat. I would have searched for you forever, he said quietly. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving me with the echo of his words and the promise of a future I had never dared imagine. Inside the tent, I found simple but comfortable accommodations. A bed, fresh clothing, a basin of water for washing. I changed out of the ceremonial gown, letting the heavy silk pool at my feet, a symbol of the life I was leaving behind. As I prepared for sleep, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a small mirror, and nearly didn't recognize myself. My face had subtly changed, features sharpening, becoming more defined as the suppressants continued to fade from my system. My light blonde hair seemed to glow with inner light, and my eyes, they were unmistakably my mother's eyes now. Green with flecks of gold, power shimmering just beneath the surface. I touched the Moon River pendant at my throat. Feeling its comforting weight, I found my way home, Mother, I whispered. Not to a place, but to myself. Outside, the moon continued its journey across the night sky, casting silver light through the forest. In its radiance, I felt my mother's presence, not as a ghost or spirit, but as part of the bloodline that flowed through me, the heritage I would now uphold and restore. Tomorrow would bring challenges, responsibilities, a pact to lead and alliances to forge. But tonight, for the first time in my life, I fell asleep not as Charlotte the unwanted Omega, but as Charlotte Moonriver, Alpha female, heir to an ancient bloodline, and perhaps someday mate to the Alpha King who had searched 15 years to find me. The ugly Omega sent to clean the ceremony as a joke had found her true place at last, not just at Adrian's side, but in her own power, her own right, her own truth.